Peace be with you. It's a simple, beautiful greeting, isn't it? Even in other long-standing languages like Hebrew and Arabic, shalom, assalamu alaikum, it all translates into the same disarming, inviting, gentle aspiration for us all. We never weary of it, and it bears repeating. Peace be with you. These are the first words uttered by Jesus, according to the Gospel of John, when twice he appears behind closed doors to a frightened ensemble of disciples hiding for their lives. The first time was a few days after Jesus' crucifixion and death, and then again a week later from that first time. The first greeting does little to assuage the shock of the disciples. And it isn't until the second greeting, a week later, that his words begin to address their doubt. Believe it or not, shock and doubt are two prominent symptoms of Easter, as distinct from, and yet in relationship to, hope and joy. And thank goodness, because shock and doubt are also two prominent symptoms of a pandemic. When Thomas's conditions of seeing and touching Jesus are finally appeased, so also are his doubts and shock affirmed. You have believed because you have seen me, says Jesus to Thomas. Blessed are those who have not seen and believed. Jesus is not admonishing Thomas. Thomas isn't being told that he got a D on his Easter exam. That is to say, he passed, but it's just not as good as the others in the class. No. This is a reminder that no matter how much we believe or doubt or both, Easter is not contingent on this. Easter is about resilience, whether we believe or doubt, or both. And frankly, doubt only deepens the resilience. I know we have our word resurrection at Easter, and it's a remarkable, rich, wonderful word. But if we are to permit the conditions in which we are all living right now to help us see and hear the meaning of resurrection more potently, then think resiliency. Just as solidarity with all people, especially those who could use an equal playing field like a guaranteed basic livable income, whose equity is dependent on our mutual support and allyship, just as this kind of solidarity is a way to see salvation as a living, breathing reality, so also, I believe, resurrection is best understood as the resiliency of love. The greatest lesson which physical isolation has taught me in these times is what it means to be a spiritual being at all times. And it seems I'm not alone in this conviction. The Globe and Mail reports that despite only 25% of Canadians admitting to praying before the pandemic, since the pandemic, 36% of those who claim no religion now practice some form of prayer. Emphasis on some form. Including 15% of people who say they never pray but are now praying. Women are praying more than men. Black people more than white people. Seniors more than young people. But in all demographics, the numbers are up. And with it, a new sense of community is emerging. Our missing the ability to be together is one thing, in one space, whether as a faith community or as families or as friends, but finding a resiliency in what it means to be community while at distance is not dissuaded and is still evolving. Despite our problems in trying to live stream last week's Easter service and only sending out a recorded version much later, we are still averaging more views per recorded service in the last year than at any time of in-person services, during my years with you at least, prior to the pandemic. And the trend is the same across religions and theological orientations. Evangelical, conservative, liberal, progressive. Sure, there are doubts about what community means now. Sure, we have our opinions as to the best way to use or not use technology to enable that sense of community. Sure, we would much rather see and touch one another, as those disciples would have much rather wanted to see and touch the resurrected Jesus. But what distancing has done, at least in the meantime, is it has replaced our understanding for being together in person with not only being a part of something larger than ourselves, but something that is heightening our sense of personal spirituality and personal responsibility. Any form of proactive spiritual practice, when done with consistency and sincerity in a virtual world, connects us spiritually and inspires us collectively. Despite the irritations of fatigue we all have with Zoom or anything of the sort, designed to invite us into something sacred, which of course we still have to create in our own hearts and minds wherever we are when we flick on the computer. All these things are helping our brains differentiate between, for example, isolation, which is a physical experience, and solitude, which is a spiritual experience. When we see our lives in isolation, it can incite loneliness, paralyzing the human instinct for prayer. When we see our lives, however, in solitude, this counters the instinct to deny our isolation and instead embraces it, protecting our instinct for prayer. Any skepticism toward prayer before the pandemic has modified to a cautionary respect during the pandemic, because the complex calculus that is life is better served by the insight that we can't control every aspect of our existence, yet still claim our humanity with a spiritual yearning. In short, even doubt is prayer, when its honesty is not denied an encounter with resurrection, and its skepticism is itself testament to resiliency. The secret of our not being consumed by the symptoms of this pandemic is the same as the secrets of resiliency and resurrection. According to the Mind-Body Institute, which is located in Harvard University, according to the theories of relaxation response in that Mind-Body Institute, prayer of any form that has the characteristics of intention and consistency toward a greater good, in other words, is sincere and repeats itself daily, weekly, seasonally, this practice directly enables the brain to do what this pandemic is violating the brain's main role to be, namely a mapping of familiar routines we relied on before the pandemic. When these sensory points in the brain are denied, our nature clamors for something to sustain us. Something as simple yet as proficient and resilient as the repeating of spiritual mantras. So, peace be with you, says Jesus upon entering the closed-door hideout of his disciples. And then, a week later, the same thing. Peace be with you. Jesus was not simply being courteous. He was exhorting the gentle, repetitive resiliency of resurrection. And if we hope to rise with Christ, especially through these uncertain, pattern-breaking, doubt-ridden times, then so must we. Peace be with you. As music is played, you will see on your screen a repeated refrain that I shared at the end of last week's service. It's from Julian of Norwich, the 14th century mystic who wrote her renowned account of 16 visions of resurrection called Revelations of Divine Love. Throughout her writings, this phrase, or a portion of it, is repeated again and again. All shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. It is a mantra of resurrection resiliency. I also suspect the more we repeat it, the more, in fact, we will feel well. Peace be with you.